And we have a program chock full of information, and we don't want to miss any minutes where we can help it. So I just want to say welcome, and we're glad you're here. We're excited about this how-to series because sometimes it's really helpful to just get really practical information from somebody who has done this for a living. That's what this first program is. Welcome to How to Develop a Major Gifts program. And I want to thank our 2023 community programming sponsor, Sandia National Labs. I want to tell you about a few events we have coming up. If you're a TVNPA member, we have a couple of great programs. The first is our member mixer on September 21st at 5:30 p.m. Carol is going to drop the link into chat for that, and we hope to see you there. It's always a good time getting nonprofits together just for fun. Registrations on our website as well. And then also to let you know, we are recruiting for our next cohort for our executive director roundtable. That's going to start in October. This is open to TVNPA members only. It's in person. So if you are interested in joining, Carol's just dropped the link in there, and we will also be putting that, or it is on our website. And then if you're not a member yet, but you really want to be because you want to go to that mixer and be part of that roundtable, please feel free to join us. We would love to have you. You can find that information on our website as well. Juliana is going to tell you about our other upcoming programs. So I'm not going to go into that now, but you can find out almost everything we're doing on our website at tvnpa.org. I hope I don't have to do this again at the end, but we'll see. We wanted to run a quick poll because we don't know how people heard about us. So if you could just check one of those boxes, we'd like to see how you heard about this. Because we are now on Zoom, we have outreach across the country. So we're kind of curious. Okay. If 79% of people answer, but mostly TVNPA members in our newsletter, which is expected, and a little LinkedIn and one in the AFP group. So looks like 22. Oh, someone just unvoted. Anyway,
technology.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So now I am going to introduce our speaker, Juliana. Juliana is TVNPA's Director of Development and Communications. She's been with us almost a year. She has a strong background working with nonprofits, among others, the Regional Parks Foundation and Tri-City Health Center. She's a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I couldn't think of anyone better to talk to you about how to develop a major gifts program. So I'm going to turn this over to Juliana to get us started.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm thrilled to be presenting on this topic today. It's one of my sweet spots, I think, in fund development. So happy to share my experiences with you today. I also just want to thank you for joining our first in this how-to series. This is a brand new series that we've put together at TVNPA. There are 4 of them, so this is the first. And I just wanted to remind everyone, in case you didn't see all of them that are coming up, that the next one will be how to create a social media strategy with Deborah Feinstone on September 13th. Followed by how to write compelling proposals and manage a flourishing grants program with me on September 20th. So hopefully I've taught you something good today and you'll consider coming back for that one as well. And we're going to close it out with how to create a planned giving program with David Russo on September 27th. So again, if you feel like you've learned something today, you want to share it with your colleagues, you have one of these other topical areas that are of interest to you, please consider signing up. You can pick one, you can pick all 3. It's totally up to you.
And I'm just going to jump in for a second and give a huge plug for David Russo. He is one of the best speakers I've heard. He knows his planned giving and he's engaging and very thorough. So I really would hate for you to miss that opportunity.
And because this is new, I will say, we're going to do our best to answer your questions and meet your expectations. I will say this one on major gifts is probably like a 101, a primer, and just going over all of the basics, the vocabulary, the things you should know in developing a major gifts program. But we would like to ask for your feedback at the end if there's something deeper you'd like us to dive into in the future or other topics that you think would be of interest. Your feedback is just really important to help us plan these presentations. So a little bit of housekeeping before I get started. Wanted to let everyone know, as Zoom already did, but it is being recorded, and we will make the slides and the Zoom recording available at the end of the presentation. We do ask that you mute yourself during the discussion just to keep background noise to a minimum. If you want to keep your camera on or off, that's totally up to you. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so if you have questions that come up throughout the presentation, go ahead and feel free to drop them in the chat, and Carol and Kathy will be reviewing those, or you can just raise your hand in Q&A and we'll call on you there as well. And I do have 2 poll questions built in just for a little bit of interactivity. So if you could go ahead and get ready for those now. We're using Poll Everywhere, so you can use your cell phone. You can text 22333, and you're going to type in Juliana Schirmer 623, or on your web, you can go to pollev.com, and on the front page where it asks for the name of the site you're looking for, it's Juliana Schirmer 623. And I do have a QR code that comes up a little bit later if that's easier for you. Okay, so the final piece of business before we get started, once we realized how many folks were joining us from out of the area or some of the new names of people that we saw, we thought it would be a good idea to just take a minute and thank our host, Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance, for putting on this presentation today in this entire series, and to go over our mission and initiatives with you. So our goal is to provide advocacy, collaboration, and education to strengthen our nonprofit organizations that enrich our communities. And we do that through several key programs, the first of which is our membership. And hopefully some of you are already members of TVMPA, and if you're not, maybe consider becoming a member. You will qualify for our free monthly educational programs, as well as Kathy said, the opportunity to join our Executive Directors Roundtable or our Nonprofit Professionals Roundtable. And then we also have programs throughout the year like Power of Giving, which is a wonderful celebration in November, where we come together and celebrate all of the great work and honor some of the folks in our community. So if you're not a member, please consider looking into that. We also have available the Common Point Nonprofit Center. So this is our co-working space in North Livermore, where nonprofits can have a reduced price rent for the Bay Area. And it's an opportunity to work with like organizations where we can resource share and come together in a common space. So we have private offices, cubicles, shared cubicles, a big kitchen, 2 bathrooms, and most importantly, we have a large conference room. And I know many of our nonprofits like to take advantage of that for your committee meetings as well as your board meetings each month. So please take a look at that. And we also have a virtual membership for the Common Point Nonprofit Center as well. So I think it's $30 a month. You can get your mail delivered, and that does give you a couple hours of space in the conference room as well. The Tri-Valley Nonprofit Fund, this was something that we started during COVID. Each year we raise about $100,000 that we give away in small grants to any nonprofit that serves the Tri-Valley. And those grants range from $1,000 to $5,000. I am sad to say that we just closed the last opportunity in 2023 at the end of August, but the next round will open in early 2024. And finally, I just wanted to highlight one of our key initiatives, the Anti-Poverty Collaborative. This is where we work with nonprofits, faith organizations, and business leaders, and our elected officials to highlight poverty and how it's affecting those in the Tri-Valley area. We really believe that everyone deserves access to food, shelter, healthcare, and education. And we're putting on a program on Thursday, October 5th at 10 a.m. at the Bankhead Theater. That's in Livermore. So if you'd like to consider joining us for that, we invite you to go out to our website on any of these programs and learn more. So you can visit tvmpa.org. Anything I missed, Kathy? Okay. All All right, so now we're ready. Let's get into why we're all here today. So let's start talking about major gifts. So as our introduction, I selected these words really carefully. So the goal of a major gifts program is relationship building for mission advancement. And my intentionality in those words really tried to emphasize that with major gifts, relationships are at the center. The mission is what should drive our program, and advancement is the outcome. So yes, it is about fund development, but that's the end result. It really is about building relationships with people and coming up with strategies for deep investment to advance our programs. That's our goal. So whether you're considering a major gifts program, you're trying to grow one, you already have a great program, I'm just hopeful that in our time today, you'll come away with a deep appreciation of the relationship building process and a greater understanding of the fundamentals of the things we need to know to be successful. We're going to review why major gifts are the most effective way to fundraise, how to overcome fears and limitations. I know when I started in this field, it's a little bit daunting. I think, we have annual fund, we have grants, we have events, we have a lot of different ways that we raise money for our nonprofits. But major gifts and planned giving, when it's very personal and you're meeting with people face to face, it's intimidating. So I think trying to help give you some tools and tricks to overcome that is my goal today. And finally, we want to help you get everyone on board within your organization, including your board of directors, because even if we have a development director, you have a major gifts officer, you have a team, it really takes everybody. Sometimes you need your executive director or CEO involved. Sometimes it takes a board chair or volunteer to come alongside of you. So we're going to give you some tips to get them involved. Okay, we're ready for our first poll. So again, our question is, what is holding you back from raising major gifts? So I'm going to share this on my screen. Okay, can you see this? So once we start populating our answers, our Wordle should develop and we'll start to see the answers. There we go. Looking for any commonality. I'm not surprised. It looks like we're finding some commonality around time, fear, identifying the donors, nagging, feeling like maybe it's begging people for money. We've tried it, finding new donors. So this is great. This is helpful for me. And again, I think we can see the commonality of all of our fears and issues coming together. Okay, to make sure my slides move. So where do we begin? So we're going to define what is a major gift, why we should do a major gifts program, and is our organization ready? So the first thing I want to tackle is the definition. Everybody always asks me, what is a major gift? Where do we start? How do we classify when we're beginning a new program, how we're going to identify who our major gifts donors are versus who our annual fund donors are? My response to that, well, first is the definition that I would use is a major gift is when you're asking somebody for a gift in a one-on-one setting. That could be in person or it can be virtual. Ever since COVID, we all know many of our meetings are happening via Zoom, so that counts as well. And it's when you're asking for an amount that's specific and meaningful, both to the person that you're meeting with and to your organization. Now, I wish I could give you what that range is, but to be quite honest, your major gifts levels are going to vary based on your organization. It's going to be based on what we call your life cycle stage. So are you a brand new startup nonprofit? You might have very few donors coming in the door. You're going to have donors on probably the smaller end of the spectrum versus a life cycle stage of an organization that's been around for 20 years. They're mature, they have a deep donor base, they're receiving gifts regularly in the $10,000+ range. So for that smaller nonprofit that's just starting, they might decide to classify a major donor at $250 or $500 versus those who have been around a while and are raising multiple millions every year. They might say, no, for us, it's really $5,000 or $10,000. So it's really going to vary. But what I will say is the good news is no matter if you're classifying them as $250 or $10,000, our process is still the same. It's about the way we're soliciting, the way we're doing our research, and the way we're presenting the opportunities to these donors. I also like to highlight that when you're talking about major gifts, it's really about being relational versus responsive. So with your annual funds, you might have a schedule of things that you do every single year. It's a calendar. So you're going to do your spring appeal, you're going to do your year-end appeal, you might have an event, you're going to be writing grants to different corporations and foundations, and it's very cyclical, and you can kind of plan it, and then your donors are responding to those invitations, and they're very, they can be segmented or tailored, but for the most part, it's the same for everybody. Versus a major donor where it's relational. You're looking into what's meaningful for that family, you're getting to know them, you're making sure that you're customizing your communications and your appeals to them. I would also say our major gifts fundraising is mission focused versus donor driven.
Juliana, are you advancing slides?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
I'm
just wanted to make sure.
I'm almost done on this one. But it's mission focused via donor driven. And that's just a caution that I like to tell folks when they're working with major donors as well. And what I mean by that is sometimes our major donors might come in and say, I'll give you $100,000 if you create this program. So it's really hard for us nonprofits to not be kind of chasing that donation a little bit and wanting to accept it. But I just want everybody to remember that to be really effective with major gifts and not have mission creep or kind of have your mission scope expand too much, it's really helpful to, again, understand what those donors want to fund, understand what programs you have that are a match, and you're pairing those together. So you're not necessarily taking every donation that comes your way. Okay. So why should you do a major gifts program? What are the benefits to you? Without a doubt, I will tell you that major gifts fundraising is the most effective way to raise money. Again, we have annual funds, we have events, they can be very staff driven, time intensive. It takes sometimes a year to plan a lot of these activities versus major gifts where your opportunity for higher level gifts is a lot more significant, and it takes less staff investment. So how do we know it's worth the effort? Many of us are familiar with this statistic or these statistics of the cost to raise $1, but I wanted to bring them up here again, just so that they're top of mind. Historically, we know that events cost about 50 cents to 75 cents on the dollar, or 50 to 75% of the funds raised is going to go towards the cost of producing that event and hosting that event versus towards your programs. Annual fund activities generally cost about 25 cents to 30 cents on the dollar versus major gifts and capital campaigns. And that's where you start to see that larger return of about 5 to 10 cents on the dollar going towards the cost versus, so the rest can go to your programs. I'm going to say I'm not anti-event, but I also like to take this opportunity to just give this caution to folks that, there are reasons for having events for sure, but they're labor intensive and they often take the better part of a year to plan and execute. So there's great reasons to have them, but I would say significant fundraising may not be one of them. They are good for fundraising, awareness building, building a sense of community, inviting new donors to know about you and your mission and get involved. But again, if you're looking to raise a lot of money with less investment, an event will likely not be the best solution for you. So I also just wanted to share this recent update. So traditionally, we've heard the statistic that 80% of your revenue comes from about 20% of your donors. And that was true for decades. But recently, AFP did a new study and found that that shifted. And now nearly 90% of revenue is coming from approximately 10% of your donors. So this is significant. That means our donor pools are shrinking, and more donors at the top of our pyramid, this higher end, are giving more of our donations every year. So this is just something important to keep an eye on. And I think it also makes, kind of a good case for why a major gifts program is important for you. We also wanted to look at a recent Giving USA report just to highlight some of the current trends of what we're seeing. Unfortunately, we've seen overall giving has declined. I'm not necessarily surprised post-COVID, just with all of the transitions and things that have happened. There was an influx of giving to safety net providers and all of that. And now we're kind of not in a recession, but we're definitely in a period of high inflation. And I think donations have suffered a little bit because of that. Overall giving is almost 500 billion, which is super impressive. I did find it interesting to note that of those dollars, 14 billion was given by just a handful of donors. And so those are those mega wealthy folks that are giving these multi-billion-dollar gifts that we've heard about in the news. Individual giving decreased by about 6.5%. So this past year, we saw individuals at about 64% of our giving, while foundation giving increased. So it's about 21%, with about 50% of that revenue coming from family foundations. I do know one of the things we've talked about at TVMPA, and we're wondering, I haven't found the statistics that'll tell me if this is true, but we're wondering if the decrease in donors giving individually has to do with the fact that they're putting their funds in donor advised funds, which are often managed by community organizations like East Bay Community Fund or whatever, East Bay Community Foundation. So that would skew that a little bit. I would also say, well, there's a lot of benefits of donor advised funds, but one of the challenges we're finding is that when folks invest in that way, there's nothing saying that the donations are going to flow immediately to a nonprofit. A lot of times they're being held, and the impact coming to the nonprofit and the programs is not immediately felt. Okay, so some things to know about a major gifts program. I want you to be thinking of this in long-term terms. Again, your annual fund, it's a calendar, it's a cycle, it's something that you're doing year over year. And when you're developing a major gifts program, these are about relationships. So when you're meeting with somebody, you're going to be investing a lot of time in getting to know them, often several calls and meetings before you ever get to an ask. And with the statistics that we just saw of the donors, the amount of donors that we have in our universe decreasing slightly, that means we have to work harder for those gifts. So I think that speaks to now being a good time. If it's going to take a while to kind of build these relationships and start getting the gifts, why not start today? Let's go ahead and get this going and start building these relationships so that the revenue can come in. I couldn't resist, I have to say, hopefully nobody's offended, but did somebody say the F word? And what I mean by that is fundraising. It could be fear of fundraising. But I think this came up in our Wordle in our last poll. I think many of us can relate. There is just a lot of fear about making an error, putting ourselves up for embarrassment, not knowing what to say, not having the right programs to present. So I just want to acknowledge that in a funny way, that you're in good company, and many of us feel the same way. Okay, so this is our final poll of the day. Let me get this one ready for you. It's going to be same on your phone, same poll, same website. Okay, and this time you're going to answer just with the letter that corresponds with how you're feeling. So do you feel awkward about fundraising and making an ask? What are some of your negative feelings or limiting beliefs? What's holding you back from being successful? All right, so 41%, it's because we feel awkward about fundraising and making the ask. I think, again, we're all in really good company. And the only thing I can tell you, and we'll get to this a little bit later throughout our presentation, but it really is about practice, repetition, role playing, kind of making us do the hard things just until we start feeling comfortable with it. The good news is there are a lot of tools and tricks and tips that we can offer that it's going to make the process easier for you. So thank you. Thanks for playing with us. Okay, so these are kind of the top 7 fears that come up when we talk to folks about fundraising. Not surprising, we just answered these questions ourselves. Not certain about how to ask for the right dollar amount or that we are asking for the right amount. Being fearful about asking the right timing. Have we asked too soon or too late? I can tell you from experience, I have asked too soon, and it's hard. It's hard to hear that, you know, your research or your timing wasn't well prepared and the donor pushes back on you, but it happens to all of us. And I think we just learn from those experiences and how to do a little bit more research to get beyond that. We're afraid of hearing the word no, being rejected. We have a concern sometimes, and I know this has come up with some of my relationships. You're afraid of asking a colleague, a friend, a family member, somebody that's close to you. What's their response going to be? Is it going to have impact on your relationship in the future? You might have doubts on your research. You know, how many times have we met? Do I know them well enough? Do I totally understand the types of projects or programs that this family or this individual is interested in supporting? Some might have anxiety about, you know, saying the right thing, speaking the right words, stumbling over things. And again, I think that just gets better with repetition. The more you get out and do it, the easier it becomes. And then that lack of training, that fear of, you know, do I even understand the process enough to be tackling this and going out and doing this work? So some of the limiting beliefs that we might have in our nonprofits, I just wanted to challenge these for a minute. So you might have heard of the scarcity versus abundance mentality. And I think some of us have been talking about this in our appeals and the way we speak with donors. And I just want to challenge that. I want to ask you to just think about how your organization asks donors for money and how you're presenting your cases or your case for support. Is it, you know, if we don't have your donation, we're not going to be able to keep the lights on. If we don't have your donation, we're not going to be able to help 200 children this year. Or is it on the other end of abundance? So with your support, we are able to expand our programs 20%, launch in a new area, increase the number of people that we're serving. So, and the reason I bring that up is because as your frontline fundraiser, we have to have confidence in how we're asking for the support. And I think there are definitely enough resources in the community for us all to have an abundance mentality. So there's a lot of wealth, especially in the East Bay and the Tri-Valley community. I think there's enough for all of our nonprofits, and we just have to have confidence that if we articulate our mission, we articulate our vision, we're really sharing the good work that we're doing in an effective way with our donors, we're going to start receiving those donations. For those who have fear of making the ask, this was something that plagued me really early on in my career and still does to some points today. But I have to remind myself to reframe the ask. And what I mean by that is, you know, if I'm going into a meeting feeling like I'm asking for something, it's transactional. I'm asking somebody for a donation. I'm a bank. They're just giving it to me. I'm passing it to the organization, and then the process continues. It's not as personal. It starts to feel kind of icky, right? Like we don't want to go. We don't want to do that meeting because we're just constantly asking for something. But for me, if we can really reframe it, that we're inviting that person or that family to participate in something that's meaningful to them, that helps them in their family legacy, helps them feel like they're giving back to the community, helps them feel like they're making a difference, you're really giving them a gift. So instead of feeling like you're asking and taking from somebody, going into that meeting with a sense of offering something to them, I think that helps. That helps really just kind of in your own mindset, make it a little bit easier to make the ask. And that leads us, this is my final one on this, but challenging your beliefs, again, does it have to be transactional? Does it have to be that give and take relationship where you're just asking for money? And my answer is 100% no, and major gifts should not be transactional in any way. This needs to be relational fundraising where it's about the donors. So we'll talk about this in a minute, but it's really about identifying the right people that you're going to be asking. You're doing a lot of research, so you're qualifying them. You know about them, you know what they want to achieve, you know what their own goals are, you know approximately what dollar range they would be comfortable giving in, and then you're offering a program or several programs that would benefit them, and you're building that relationship together. So that's how major donors should work. Okay, is your organization ready? Let's find out if you have these pieces in place. So the key elements you're going to need for success, we'll go over those. We're going to talk about the donor relationship journey and how to make a proposal or an ask of these donors. So the key elements of success. This is where you're going to start to see a lot more text on the slides, and I did this purposefully just because I'm going to send these with you at the end, and I wanted to make sure that you have these. But number one, effective donor research. We can't expect our staff to go out and meet with people without understanding that donor's history. How do they know our organization? How have they been philanthropic with other organizations in the community? What's important to them? What do we know about their family? Do they have children? Are they married? Where do they work? So we really want to gather as much information about them as possible before going out and doing any visits with these people. It is about relationship building. We need to ascertain their capacity, their linkage, and their interest. The Lilly School of Philanthropy would actually call this linkage, ability, and interest. But those are the things that we're looking for before going out and making an ask. And then we want to make sure that we're giving them excellent stewardship with very tailored donor communications. So as you're developing your major gifts programs, I would say the other half of it is to come up with your stewardship plans if you don't already have them in place. In other words, how are you thanking these donors when they make a gift? At what level are they getting a handwritten letter or a letter that's hand signed by an executive director or CEO versus do they get a card from a board member or other staff person? Are they getting a phone call? Are they being invited in for a visit? So kind of knowing ahead of time what your ranges or levels are for thanking your donors is really important for consistency and also for tracking to make sure that it's being done. Okay, so let's talk about the journey. What does this look like? Again, we're going to identify, and we'll talk about how to find your prospects here in a minute, but we're looking for people. How do we find folks that can give at whatever dollar amount our major gifts level is? Then we're going to qualify them through our research process. This is the strategy piece. Then we're going to start our meetings. Phone calls, Zooms, in-person, lunch, tea, whatever it is. We need to have several touch points with every donor before we ever consider making an ask. That's very, very important. We finally get to the solicitation stage where we're asking to set up a meeting and we're making the ask. If that ask goes well and the donor makes a gift, we're now getting into the acknowledgement stage where we're thanking them, stewarding them. And again, after several visits, we get through the renewal process. So this is our circle of major gifts. So how do we go about finding prospects? I think a lot of smaller organizations that are just starting, this is a key question that they have. And again, you're looking for somebody with the capacity to make a major gift, whatever that range is for you. If it's $250, $10,000, you need to identify that amount. A tip I have for you, if you have a CRM already and you've had some donors coming in, you can kind of try to identify the folks that you have in your universe already by running some reports. You can run a, maybe top 50 donor report and see what that range is. So maybe it's $50, maybe it's $100, maybe it's $5,000. Where you start to see more donors in a certain range, that's where you're going to want to start. So you're not going to, if you have donors, you have 25 donors at 5,000, you only have one at 10. I wouldn't say starting at $10,000 is where you're at. You would probably want to start at 5,000 and start trying to move folks up into those higher levels. You could also do that in the reverse. If you're starting to come up with your major gifts program and you have in your heads that key number, we would like to start at $1,000, running a report in your database to see how many donors you have at $1,000 or above, and see if you have enough donors that you can start building portfolios for your staff to start working on that relationship building process. I will say we all have hidden prospects. The other thing I want to tell you is even if you don't have a lot of donors in your CRM or database, many of them, a lot of people with a lot of capacity or high capacity, they might give a test gift. So they might start giving to your organization at $50, $100, $500, and they're testing to see how they're thanked, how they're stewarded, what's that relationship process like, before they would consider making a higher end gift. So just because you have somebody in your database that's at a lower level doesn't mean that they don't have capacity to make a substantial gift. So that's one thing I just want you to keep in mind as you're doing some donor research, that sometimes it's even helpful to do some research on folks who are giving lower level gifts, just to see what you can find out about them and what their history is of other donations. It's also helpful to look back at people who've made a substantial gift in the last year and a half to 2 years. And some of the things that you're looking for are, have they increased their giving? Have they been consistent in their giving? Have they attended your events? How connected and engaged are they with your nonprofit and your mission? And those are going to be your top prospects. You're looking for engagement and you're looking for a history of some sort of donations. I'll also say that I would tell you to narrow your focus. For those of you who've been around a while, maybe 20 plus years, you have thousands of names or people in your databases. I wouldn't start with screening all of them. Again, you're going to be looking back at the last couple of years for your folks who've been most connected to you, who've been making regular donations. And you could always go backwards and do research later. But I think starting small, narrowing your focus is going to help you get this off the ground faster and be more effective. Some folks you might want to look at when you're starting to do your research or build your portfolios, you're going to want to look at current donors, current and former board members, volunteers, some of those lapsed donors, maybe they gave a couple years ago, but for one reason or another, they haven't given recently. And many of us are also connected to civic groups. We have family members, Rotary clubs, whatever that might look like. We attend other events in the community. So doing an exercise where you're starting to write down that kind of your sphere of influence, who do you know, who are you connected to, and then writing that information down and starting to do some research there, that can be very, very helpful, especially when you're not doing it alone, but you do it in an exercise with your board and committee members. Individuals over 60 can be good prospects, and then we'll talk in a little bit about paying for prospects. The reason I say donors over 60 isn't to call out one age group over another, but I just wanted to show, and this has been a trend that's been happening for probably a good 10, 20 years now, the majority of our donors are 60 plus that are giving at these top end of your donor pyramids. And it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, if we think about it, those who are starting out might have student loans that they're still paying off, starting their families, trying to get a house. So they don't have as much disposable income as some of the folks who are a little bit more mature and who've, a little bit further along. Now, not to say some young people don't, because they do, but this is just something to consider when you're looking for donors. Okay, I'm just gonna go, I'm looking at the time here. So When we're qualifying, so once we've identified folks in our database, we want to qualify them. And we're going to want to, your goal is to get folks in this higher quadrant. So you're looking for people with high capacity and high likelihood to give. That's where you want to focus your time. If somebody has high capacity but low likelihood, that could be somebody like, Kathy and I joked about this the other day, but Oprah or Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, right? Like we've all heard of these wonderful folks with great philanthropy, and we want to get them for our nonprofits, but they don't know who we are. They don't give in our service area. So there's probably a really low likelihood that they're going to make a gift to us. Not to say it doesn't happen, but we probably don't want to spend our time in that upper left quadrant. We want to spend our time in this upper right quadrant. So finding folks with high capacity, high linkage, high interest, and they want to donate to our organization. I see I have a typo in my bottom lower quadrant, so I apologize. I'll fix that before sending it to you, but this should say low capacity, high interest. So these would be folks in this lower right-hand quadrant who maybe they're new in their career, but they're super engaged with us. They love our mission. They love what we do. Kathy gave the description the other day of folks with the Hertz Foundation. You might get these new fellows in who are young in their careers, but that doesn't mean at some point they're not going to move up and that they're not going to have more disposable income to make gifts. So just remember, it's relationship building. It happens over time. So just stay on this right-hand quadrant. Okay, so really quickly, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the tools that are available to you for doing your qualifications and your research. I've used several of them, and some of them are lower tech and some of them are more on the technology side. I have some spreadsheets that I can send to you if you're interested. I still use these today, but these would be for exercises that I do with boards of directors or development committees within the boards. We do that relationship mapping exercise where identifying who they know, what other boards they sit on with people, what civic groups they attend, their church, their family member, whatever that might be. And we're working to kind of develop that pipeline. So who do they know? What organizations have they given to in the community? Approximately what dollar range? Do we know where they work? And we'll start taking that information, putting it into our CRM, and that will help us do some research and build out our portfolios. The technology side, though, is super helpful, even with that information that you get from your board or staff. These paid tools, there's Donor Search, Wealth Engine, iWave, LexisNexis. Hopefully you've heard of some of these. I've used several. A lot of them use the same algorithms and data sets for tracking the information that they're pulling together. Some are a little more comprehensive and they're also more expensive. But what they'll do is they'll help you get a donor rating. So they're going out and looking at, does this person own an airplane? Do they own multiple properties in multiple states? What do they give to political causes? What other donations have they given? And all of that's going to come together and help you build your data so that you can decide if this donor makes sense for you and if you feel like they would be interested in making a gift to you. And also it helps you with that range. What do I ask for? Okay, I'm going to have to go a little bit faster, so I apologize. I'm going to try to breeze through some of these. We're going to get to the ask. So there's 5 R's when you're making an ask. You want the right person, asking the right person, at the right time, for the right amount, for the right project. So I used to keep this hanging above my desk for a while because when I was building my portfolios or thinking about it, I wanted to always keep it top of mind. Who am I bringing with me? And what is our major gifts team going to look like? Let's go through this. So when we're building our portfolios, again, it's really important that you're focusing on who they know. Just because you have a major gifts officer or a development director does not necessarily mean that that person is best to own the relationship. If the person has a great relationship with a board member or your executive director, or maybe they're just driven by wanting to talk to the top person in your organization, you're going to want to give a portfolio to your CEO or executive director, and you can always assist them. but it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're paid in a development capacity that you're the best one to manage that relationship. I also wanted to just say, for some of you starting out and thinking about this, to be realistic with your major gift officer portfolios. You might have 300 people in your database that you're looking to seek a gift from, but realistically, this person is not going to be able to manage more than 75 to 100 in their portfolio and engage with them in a meaningful way where they're having their meetings and making their asks. As we're developing our strategy before we go into the ask, I would tell you to identify 3 to 4 projects that you want to talk to the donors about. You might have 20 within your organization, but that's going to be overwhelming. So hopefully you've done your research and you're able to understand what that person might be interested in funding, and you come with a couple of projects. You can give them a menu, so you can say, would you consider a gift of $5,000 for this or $10,000 for this? And that helps them feel engaged, like it gives them a choice in what they're supporting you in. It also helps you to get to know them over time, you know, what resonated out of the previous proposals that you've given them. And always seek to meet their needs first. Whatever you're proposing, you know, it's not just your highest level need, it also needs to be of interest to them. Quickly, again, we're going to qualify, cultivate, open the ask, close the deal, steward the gift, and start the process over again. Now we're ready for our meeting. So how do you get the meeting? How do you get somebody to even decide that they're willing to meet with you? Asking for advice. That one is huge. We did this when I worked in San Francisco, and it was so helpful. You know, we're looking to start a new building. What do you think about our color scheme? Or what do you think about this design aspect? It could be on anything, but people really like to feel like they're giving you something as well, and that it's a give and take relationship. If you have room, you can invite somebody onto an advisory board or committee if you don't have room on your board for one of these top level donors, and inviting them to volunteer. This is keeping them engaged. And then when you ask for your meeting, they're much more apt to say yes. Okay. Again, schedule thank you visits throughout the year, invite them to your large events or any donor cultivation events that you're hosting. As you're getting ready to make your ask, listen 60% of the time and talk no more than 40% of the time. This one is key. I've been in many meetings where people feel like those pregnant pauses or silence is awkward and we want to fill the space and we just keep talking. And if we do that, we're not getting to know the donor, which is not going to help us when we get to the actual ask. So I say, let's give them some questions that will keep them talking. And then when we get back, we're going to take those notes and put them in our database. And that's going to help us when we actually sit down and make that ask with them. Before you go, again, I want you to know who's on your ask team. Is it just you? Are you bringing your CEO or executive director? Is a board member coming with you? I like to have 2 people in every ask if ever possible. I think it helps kind of with some of the tension. You can play off of each other. There might be something you miss that the other person might pick up on. So I think having either a board member or another staff person with you is very helpful, and you can rehearse with them, which makes it a little bit easier. I also like to prepare what I call a donor brief. Even if you have a CRM system that keeps all of your data, if you can export it into a Word document, that's something that you can share with your ask team, and then you're all on the same page. So it's going to have your donor history. You know, what do you know about them? What was their last gift? What was the gift amount? What are we asking for? Who's doing the ask? And then right before, when you're in the car and you're ready to go into that next meeting, it helps you all be on the same page so that it's just top of mind. That might sound a little bit silly, but especially if you're somebody who's going out on several asks in a day, it's just so helpful to keep your data straight and remember one donor from the next. As you're preparing to make your ask, I wanted to remind you to have 4 to 5 touch points with a donor, meaning it could be a thank you card, a phone call, liking their stuff on social media, but just make sure that before you make an ask, they're feeling engaged with you. Make sure you've asked your exploratory questions and you've documented all of those. And here are some of the questions that I can share with you. I have 2 slides on these. And again, I typed them all in here so that you can have them. But they're pretty simple. I mean, really, it's just getting to know you. Why did you make a gift to our organization? Why did our mission feel important to you? What do you find rewarding about this work? What was the first time you made a large gift, and what was that to, or how did that make you feel? You can also ask them, was there a time that you made a gift where you felt unfulfilled? Not necessarily to your nonprofit, but to any nonprofit. So you get a better understanding of how they want to be treated, what they like, what they don't like. And this is where you're going to start to ask them information about, like we have 16 programs, which of these resonate with you, and why, is it education because they have a young family, or is it the environment because that's important to them? What is it that we can take back and really partner our requests together? Finally, I'll just say 2 quick things. I also truly believe that if you're asking for a gift, you should be making a gift to the organization first. Don't be caught flat-footed if the donor comes to you and asks, well, what do you support? Or what have you given to? Or, why do you work here? You want to have a good answer. So I think if you're in fundraising, it's super important that you're also supporting the mission of the organization that you're asking for. And it's really important that you're making it personal. When you're going into these meetings, bring stories, photos, videos, testimonials, invite them to tours of your facility, anything that you can do where they can see the impact of the dollar. And, it's great to give them a report. It's great to give them statistics, but that's not going to speak to their heart. And that's not going to get them to continue that relationship with you. So prepare all of those things ahead of time. When you go to make the ask, we want you to be transparent. I believe that every donor should know that you're coming to ask them for a gift. So don't surprise them. Don't catch them off guard. Make sure that you're asking them, is it okay if we meet, because I'd like to discuss some areas where we could use your support. Would that be okay with you? So they know ahead of time that an ask is coming. I also say know your ask amount. If you've done your research, you should know the range in which a donor will be able to support your organization. If you don't know how much to ask for, you can ask them, is it okay if I just present the opportunities and you can give a gift that's most meaningful to you? There has been some recent research that's come out that says if you don't present them with an amount and you let them decide, often it's a higher gift than you would have asked for anyway. So I've started using this tactic a little bit. Or if you're presenting them with a portfolio of things they can fund, you can also kind of pass along a gift chart and say, we were hoping you would consider making a gift in this range. So maybe on your chart, it's like, 10 to 15,000, and you point to that on the chart. But it's a softer way if coming straight out and saying, would you make a gift of $10,000 today is hard for you. It's another way that you can make that ask. I also say, if you have a fear of asking, be honest about it. If you're an executive director, tell them, fundraising is not my key role here, but I'm here because I believe in this organization and I want to invite you to participate. I would love to ask you for a gift of $10,000 to help us continue our work. But I think that just kind of, takes a little bit of that fear out as well. If you're asking your friends or colleagues, I know Kathy and I have talked about this a couple of times, you can tell them, I'm here not as your friend today. I'm here as the executive director of this organization. I'm super passionate about it. I love what I do. I hope you don't mind, but I want to share a little bit and see if you want to get involved. If they say no, then just completely okay. Like, no harm. We totally understand. But do you know of anybody else that we should talk to? Do you have any other friends or colleagues that you think this would be important for them to support? And you could also ask them to amplify your message by liking your posts on social media or something. We are almost out of time, so I'm going to have to keep going quickly. I apologize. Responding to a yes. So if you get your yes from your ask, this is the ideal situation. This is what you want to see. Thank your donor, Ask them how they want to make their gift, just so you know what to expect. Is it ACH? Is it a check? When do they think the timing's going to come through, if it might be through another fund? Ask them their gift recognition preferences. How do they want to be recognized for that gift? And then go ahead and leave. I would say at that point, while you're in your car, or as soon as possible, start writing down notes from that meeting. What went well? What didn't? What would you do differently next time? Do you think you got the size of gift that you hoped for? So that's really important. If you get a maybe, this is hard. And this has happened to me a lot. And I think it could be for a lot of reasons, but a lot of times it's the timing. Maybe they just bought a new house, or maybe their child just left for college, so something you didn't anticipate or you didn't know. It could be that maybe you asked for a gift that was higher than they were ready to make at that given time, or they just need more time to consider it. Maybe their significant other, partner, whomever wasn't in the meeting with them, and they need time to get back to you, and that's totally reasonable. So the importance here is that you just want to follow up, and you want to follow up promptly. If they ask for more information, make sure that you give it to them, and keep that conversation going while it's hot. And if it's a no, I just remind you there's two different no's that you can consider. One is a hard no, meaning maybe they give to animals and you're an environmental organization and they don't see the connection there. And they say, we're really going to continue giving over here. Thank you very much. I would probably remove that person from my portfolio. It's not a good match. If it's a soft no, meaning not at this time, but we would consider it in the future, I would consider that more of a maybe response, and continue cultivating that donor and see if you can get them to a yes. So quickly, gift recognition. Hopefully we talked about this earlier, making sure you understand how you're going to thank them when the gift has been received and who's doing it. Measuring success. I'm just going to skip to the next one. I encourage all of you to set metrics for your portfolios. So what's the total dollar amount that you would expect in a given year to get if you closed all of the gifts that you're asking for? What's that goal for the year? Do you have a goal for each donor? And then having a goal for the number of calls or in-person visits that you're making, or your team is making. And then that you do a check-in and regular review. So it could be yourself, your development director, your executive director, whomever is on that gift team. Make sure you're checking in, because otherwise it's too easy to let it go. And I've seen it happen so many times. It's the end of the year, we're scrambling. Oh, wow, yeah, we were supposed to raise $200,000 from major gifts, and the work hasn't been done, to make those asks. So it's just really important that you're scheduling time to check in on that regularly. Okay, so I apologize. This went much longer than I anticipated, but that was the presentation, and we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
There is one question in chat.
Okay.
And Jamie was saying, how are you finding out all of the info about your donors? I find what's in the donor research and to be lacking.
So I personally, I use Wealth Engine a lot, or Donor Search. I feel like those tools, I've used iWave. I feel like they give you a lot of really good information. Again, the political donations somebody's made, any charitable donations someone has made, how many homes they might have. The tools will give you that charitable wealth rating by person, and that'll help you score, is this a lower end capacity donor or a higher end capacity donor? I generally don't stop there with those tools. I also just do a lot of Google searches on people. It's amazing what you'll find. But when you're talking about people with this type of capacity, many of them are CEOs or high up in their company. There's news articles about them. You'll learn things about their companies, about their families. So I try to do holistic research, and then keeping all of that in the databases. So hopefully that's helpful. I do say to cross-reference any of the tool research that you get. Don't necessarily take it all at face value. These are just computers that are out, running algorithms, and they might miss things. Someone might have a trust and the name isn't exactly right. So it does take some human effort to cross-reference the analysis and make sure it's accurate.
We did a test at the Hertz Foundation where we sent out like 50 names and included our board members for an organization to prepare an analysis on it. And the dollar amounts that they came back with were pretty close to what was real, but not in the way that the donor research showed it. So while someone might be worth 3 million in giving, it came from different places than what was stated. Okay, so here are a couple of questions. Maureen is asking, if you do end up using iWay for prospecting and want to do cold outreach, how effective are you in sending letters and getting a meeting with donors?
So I didn't have time to cover this, but great question. Personally, I find a lot of those tools offer paid search tools where you can pay the platform to help you identify folks who aren't connected with you, but they're looking for certain criteria on your behalf. So it's kind of like similar to doing an ad on Facebook or something. You're putting in the geographical range, you're putting in their income level, if they've given to like charities or organizations, you know, whether it's social services, healthcare, whatever. And then you can pay by the name. So sometimes what's in my head is about 60 cents a name. It goes down if you buy in bulk, but just to keep in mind, that's kind of what you're looking for. I found that we never break even when I've used those. We have gotten donations from those folks. We can write a letter, we can get them in. But because they weren't connected ahead of time, they might make a one-time gift, and then it's really hard to renew them and get them and keep them engaged. I've heard recently that the folks who've had the most success for that is when they're doing a capital campaign, because it's something tangible. So if you're building a library in your community, people will know their dollar is going to go to that library or that school or whatever that facility is, and they're going to be able to see the result. So it's a little easier, I think, to convert a donor that way versus if it's for a program or something that they don't totally understand.
Then Lynn was wondering, she says, I'm concerned that we're a small nonprofit with no paid staff and all of our work is done by volunteer board members. Is it feasible to expect that we can develop a major gifts program?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's probably a misnomer that people have, that, you know, you need paid staff to do this work. And I've seen it over and over where it really is volunteer led. And eventually when the funds come in, they're able to hire the staff. But it's really about, again, you do need somebody who's willing to invest in the research. Maybe it's at a board meeting and you all sit down and do that relationship mapping and get your names, and then you divide it up. You know, I'll take these 5, I'll take these 5, and you start the cultivation process and the research and keeping of notes. But I think you can be super successful. And a lot of times people want to give to people who are like them. You're a volunteer, you're giving to the organization. It's going to help it feel more personal than just a paid staff member, to be totally honest. You can also look for, I call it fractional leadership, but there are, you know, folks out there who can help you on a limited basis or consulting basis to get your frameworks together, and then your volunteers take it from there. So I think you could look at a hybrid approach as well.
Well, I think we might have time to hone our acting skills.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah. Juliana prepared a script that for an ask. So there are 3 very short responses. And so Marty Sutton, TVNPA's board chair, myself and Juliana are going to star in them. I think I'm the donor, right?
Yeah, we'll do the first one. I don't know that we'll have time to do all 3.
Okay, Juliana's the asker and Marty is the supporting board member who's going along for the ride. So,
which one are we doing? I'm sorry.
The first one. We're gonna make it a yes. We did different ones, but we don't have a lot of time. So
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Kathy. It's so great to see you. Thank you so much for meeting us today. I wanted to take a minute and introduce you to our board member, Marty Sutton, and I wanted to bring her with me today because she's a huge supporter of our anti-poverty collaborative, and I just thought it would be great for you to get to know her and kind of why she supports our organization.
Thank you, Kathy, for meeting with us. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to working with you.
It's nice to meet you too. The setting is lovely, and I'm curious about the purpose of our meeting.
Well, we're just so thankful for your time, and we're entering into a new phase of work, and I wanted to share about this key program I mentioned, the Anti-Poverty Collaborative, because we're building relationships and working on programs that can help nonprofits amplify their messages about poverty and how it's affecting people in the Tri-Valley. We're working together to tackle systemic issues from helping people with food insecurity, housing, employment, healthcare. And it's really going to require collective action from our nonprofits, faith leaders, businesses, legislators. And we're hoping that you might get involved with us with that today.
Exactly. We are creating a new program to enable these key stakeholders to get the training and resources they need to make their efforts more impactful. With $50,000 more, we can change the narrative and drive real action into the Tri-Valley.
That's indeed ambitious, but very much needed.
So Kathy, you have been a supporter of TVMPA for a really long time, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you over this past year. And, as I got to know you and your family, I learned, just how much you want to support not only the nonprofits that TVMPA works so hard to support, but the people that the nonprofits serve. And with that, we're just really hoping that you would come in and consider making a gift to the Anti-Poverty Collaborative at the $10,000 level, which will really help just fuel this new initiative. Is that something that you and your family would consider?
Well, I've been impressed with your work so far, so you can count me in for the $10,000.
Laughing because it's not always that easy. Go ahead, Marty.
That's you.
Yeah.
Oh, my nice. Okay, that's fantastic news. And we're so grateful for your generous contribution. Your gift is going to help us create the necessary programs for systemic change. We'll be sure and share our next details and next steps with you, but I just want to thank you so much for this incredibly generous donation.
Kathy, thank you so much for all of your support. This is an investment that will significantly accelerate our initiatives and amplify our impact in the community.
It's my pleasure.
And see.
Real quick, the maybe, why don't we just jump down to where you've asked? And I'm going to say, it does sound like a comprehensive plan, but 10,000 is a significant amount. Could I have some more details? Do you see where I am?
I'm catching you. Yeah, absolutely. So we're in the process of developing a detailed project plan. We're not quite done yet, but we're almost done. And we're planning to outline how each dollar is going to be used, from content creation all the way to resource allocation and impact assessment. So is that something that we can share with you when we get that finished?
I'll need some time to consider this. Could you send me the project plan for review?
Absolutely. Again, it should be any day now, and we'll get that to you right away. We do understand this is a significant commitment and investment, so we'll get you that plan shortly, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, there we go. And then I'm just gonna.
Oops, Marty was on.
Ahead. Let's go to the question. Let's go to the Q&A. We're just gonna do the note.
Okay.
You have another question. Is it helpful to ask the donor if it's okay to use their name as a supporter when meeting with other donors? It's a good question.
Absolutely. So that's part of that recognition part. Do they want to be anonymous? Is it okay to mention them with others? Because they can be an influencer. They can, and you could also ask that too. Not only would their gift be important, but would they speak on your behalf with others in the community about why they're being involved with this organization?
There's one other question about, do you find that staff, board, and individuals are just as successful using the iWave Wealth Engine tools as hiring a paid consultant?
I don't know if it's a one or the other. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be a lawyer. It depends. So I do think iWave or one of those tools is really helpful in doing the research. And I think your staff or volunteers can be just as successful pulling that as somebody else external could be. But where I say sometimes having a consultant might be helpful to you is it depends on how many staff you have dedicated to this, what your goal is. Are you taking on something major like a capital campaign, where you're getting kind of outside of your scope that you're comfortable handling? You're still having your annual fund, you're still having your events, all of those things need to continue. So sometimes having some outside support for a large initiative can be helpful. So it depends.
Okay, well, on that note, I again want to thank Sandia for being a sponsor of ours, and then thank Juliana for sharing all of her wisdom with us today. So thank you very much, Juliana. I remind you that we have 3 more programs in this how-to series, and you can do one or all 3 of them. And then also that we will be sending out the slides. And this video, it takes about usually within a week, but for our IT guy to edit and to get it up on our website. So you can find the link on our website in a little bit, but we'll go ahead and send out the slides as promised. So thank you very much.
As I said, this is more of a one-on-one overview or 101 overview. It's really hard to talk about in depth all of the different things you need to know in a major gifts program in 1 hour on Zoom. So if going a little bit deeper would be helpful, we've talked about doing more of a workshop where we meet in person and we go through role-playing scenarios where you could bring a board member, a staff person, and we practice and get awkward together. You know, that might be helpful. So if anything like that is helpful to you, just let us know so we know where to go next.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for being here. Hope to see you at the next one.